Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
All right. Shalom, everybody. Mechila for the delay. There's a story from the Rav Ben Ishchai writes, Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim. He writes that a tzaddik one time went to a very, very close friend of his, and he went uninvited. So he figured it's not nice. So the whole family, they picked up their cholent pot and they all went to the other fellow's home. And okay, very nice, beautiful. During the seudah, they brought lavish seudah and everything. In the seudah itself, they also served the cholent that the uninvited guests brought in, and everybody noticed this has a special smell to it. So he says, what is this? How come this is so much different than ours? He says, I'll tell you, because my wife, at every step of the way when she's making this food, she says, Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh. At every step of the way. When she goes shopping, when she's washing it, when she's cutting all the things, everything. She says every time Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh. But by you, who's doing it? Your servants, your maids. It's a completely different kedusha, it's a completely different setup when it's done with that intention of Lichvot Shabbat. And it says, it's interesting, I remember in Machne Yehuda, in Yerushalayim, when you go shopping, one of the vendors, one of the vegetable vendors, they had a huge sign, right by the cashier, say Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh. It's it's still there. Checked it out this summer. It's still there. All right, we are be'ezrat Hashem going to begin the halachot of Qosher umatir, right? Qosher umatir, that's tying and untying, right? Where do you find this melacha? Where is the stem of this melacha? It is when during the time that they were building the Mishkan, they would build the curtains and the coverings of the Mishkan. They would have to weave all these things together. At the time of weaving, not all the strings are as strong as polyester. They would snap. In order to fix that, what would they do? They can't redo the whole thing. They would have to make a knot. And that knot that they would make, this is kosher. Sometimes they would have to open the knots. That's another thing. That's one. Also, for getting the dye of techelet, right? So you would have to capture a chilazon, some sort of a snail, some sort of a sea creature. And in order to catch it, they would have to weave or make nets. The way they would make the net, they would take a string, they would tie it to another string, different, the sizes and different lengths. Sometimes they would have to open it in order to expand it. Sometimes they would have to make more knots to make it smaller, and so on and so forth. And that was also another contraption that they would use in the Mishkan. So therefore, this melacha, this is one of the melachot that become asur for Shabbat. What is kosher? What is matir? Kosher is when you tie two things together for any usage, for any reason, right? Two strings, you tie them together for any usage, that would be kosher. And matir is also untying an existing knot, an existing thing that was knotted together. You untie it for any reason whatsoever, is also considered the melacha of matir. Some say that the only isur of melacha matir is if you're untying the knot in order to re-tie it, right? Otherwise, when you unravel, when you untie something, it's mekalkel. You're breaking something down. If it's for no use at all, you're breaking something down, and that wouldn't be a melacha of Shabbat. But there's a machloket on that between the Rishonim. What it is, we are going with the hanacha. We're going with the thing that even if it's not for retying, it would still be asur. Now, in order for a kesher, for a knot to be asur, you need two conditions. First, it has to be kesher shel kayama. You want it to be a kesher, a knot, which will stay. Okay? That you want it to stay. According to the Rif and the Rambam, this knot has to be in your intention that you want it to stay forever. Right? That's your intention. That would be the Isur of Torah. Some say, no, you need it to stay for 7 days. Right? And that is what Maran says. We are Some say it's only for 4 hours, right? So there's different, things of the spectrum. Maran seems to be going with the opinion of 7 days. Meaning, if a person wants to make a knot and he wants it to stay for 7 days, okay, that is considered kesher shel kayama. All right? That's condition number 1. Is that clear so far? So you make a knot that it should stay kayama for forever, for 7 days, for 24 hours. The other condition is that it has to be ma'aseh uman. Ma'aseh uman means an act of an expert, right? That means not your regular knots that you would make. It has to be something that only an expert knows how to do. Like, Boy Scouts, the sailors, or that type. These are the things that they would have to make expert knots. Back in the day, when they would make shoemakers, they would take a piece of leather for the bottom, and then they would take straps of leather, and they would tie it with a special knot onto the shoe for, let's say, sandals or even shoes. They would tie it together with that insole of the shoe. And that's kesher shel kayama. That was a knot that they wanted to stay. They had no intention of opening it. That is considered kesher shel kayama, which is absolutely asur on Shabbat. Or sailors, they would have a ship, right? In the front of the ship, I don't know if you've noticed, in old ships, they would drill a hole. I'm talking about a hole probably this huge. And then they would run a rope, which is probably this thick, right, through that hole, and they would make some crazy knot, and that loop is meant to stay forever, never to remove it. If they want to put an anchor or something onto it, they would run another loop into it and use it to tie it onto the port or whatever it was, and then they would unravel that one. But that one, the first original loop, would stay forever. That is a kesher shel kayama, and that is ma'aseh uman. That's an expert knot that they would make in order that it should be, they should stay there forever, and that is a chiyuv in that case. Both of these cases, the person who does it would be chayav from the Torah. That's absolutely asur.
So the only knot that's not asur is the one that would stay 24 hours, you said? Or?
No, we're going to see. Right now, let's see what will kill you for, and then we'll see what is allowed, or what is only rabbinic. Okay? So right now, kesher shel kayama and ma'aseh uman. You need these two conditions. If both of the conditions are met, this is asur from the Torah. Like the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says in Shabbat, these are the elu kesharim shechayavim aleihem b'Shabbat. These are the kesharim. These are the knots that a person is chayav. That means it's absolutely asur. Kesher hagamalim, right? The kesher has sapanim. Gamalim are camel drivers, right? They would make a hole in the nose of the camel, right? And they would run a rope through that hole, and they would tie it. And you want that to stay. They would also keep that. The same idea as the ship was the camel. I don't know how much the camel minded, but that's how it was. This is the way you could control him, because that's, camels needed really to be controlled. And that's kesher shel gamalim. Sapanim, we already explained that's what they would do on the ship. So these two cases would be the cases of kesharim, of knots, that are absolutely asur from the Torah. Now, one who makes a kesher, now we're moving down, makes a kesher, makes a knot. It is a knot which is kesher shel kayama. You want it to stay, but it's not ma'aseh uman. It's not an expert knot. Example the Gemara gives is the kesher that they would make onto a deli. A deli is a bucket. Back in the day, where would you get water from? They would have a whale, and they would have it like a contraption like this on top of it, like a wood thing, and they would have a rope hanging from there into the whale. This rope was tied onto some sort of a bucket, right? Now they would tie this onto the bucket. You want the knot to stay. It's kesher shel kayama, but it's not an expert knot. You can make a bow tie even. As long as it'll work, for you to draw the water, that's good enough. So that's a prime example that the Gemara brings for a kesher which is shel kayama, you want it to stay, but it's not an expert knot. On that, that's not asur from the Torah, that's asur midrabanan, right? The Chachamim said that that type of a knot, which you would want it to stay, but it's not an expert knot, it is still asur. Okay? So that's according to most of the opinions, right? Some say that it's that case, because you want it to stay, even though it's not an expert knot, it would be asur from the Torah. But our main poskim, the Rambam, Rif, they all require both conditions. So because it's not an expert knot, therefore it went down a level, and it's not a Torah prohibition, it's a rabbinic prohibition. Or vice versa. You have a knot which is Maaseh Uman, is an expert knot, but it's not something you want it to stay, right? Then again, that's the Isur over here would be rabbinic, right? And in that case, it would be mutar, like it says in the Mishnah. They would have, they didn't have measuring tapes those days. They wanted to measure, let's say, a mikveh, to see how much water there is in the mikveh. You can't look, they didn't have draw lines on there, to see, okay, it's on the fill line. They would have to measure it. How would they do it? They had ropes, and they would tie these, I think it was every 20 centimeters it was. So they would tie the string to this, and they would send it down to see how deep the water is. That's the last Mishnah Masachet Shabbat, where it says that this is how they would measure it. So it's for the mitzvah. In that case, the rabbis, because it's rabbinic, the rabbis never instituted this dictum on this case, right? If it's rabbinic, the rabbis would want you to do a mitzvah. So they would never tell you, oh, you can't do this. If it's for the mitzvah, Chachamim never made the gezerah. Therefore, even though it's a maaseh uman, it's an expert knot, but being that it's not kayama, you don't want it to stay, therefore, for mitzvah is mutar. Also, as you know, the Leviim would play musical instruments in the Bet HaMikdash. Let's say, on Shabbat, the Leviim also had to play the music during the time that they're bringing Korban. And if one of the strings snapped, what can they do? Right? You need to tie it together. Although it's not a Qosher Shekayama, he's not going to play the musical instrument with one of the strings being... no, he will replace it after Shabbat. So it's not Qosher Shekayama. This knot is not there to stay. But it's an expert knot. Over there also, it is allowed. And these are the different examples. Now, because of this, because if one of the conditions are missing, it becomes rabbinic. Let's say you blow into a balloon for your kid. One of the kids wants to play. He says, "Oh, mommy, I want you to blow this up," and you do it, or any bag for that matter. And then he wants to tie it, right? It's asur. Why? Because although it's not Maaseh Uman, definitely not Maaseh Uman, but it's a Qosher Shekayama. You want it to stay. You don't want the air to come out. You want it to stay as long as it can. So therefore, rabbinically, it is asur.
What if you don't care if it comes out?
It doesn't matter. This is what's going to happen. This is what it is. Another example is your garbage bag, right? You take the garbage bag out. What do? Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, they have the pull strings. But let's say you bought the cheaper ones that don't have the pull string. So you want to make a knot, right? You could make one knot, just one wrap. That's not even a knot. That's called a wrap. But if you want to make a double knot, that's asur, because you want this to stay. You're not going to go back to the thing right after Shabbat and open it up. That's for sure not, right? So in that case, although it's not a maaseh uman, you're not doing any expert knot, but it's something that's going to stay. Therefore, it's asur, right? It's asur, and the person should not do that.
Let's say someone did it. You can go back and undo it, right?
That won't help.
Why?
At the time that they made the knots, they were over on the Isur of Terapanah.
So it's the same thing as tying your shoelace.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. A little different, right?
So if you blow a balloon but you don't tie it, that's allowed?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Blowing a balloon is not a problem.
Okay.
You're not making it clean. It's there already. Now, what do you do with a balloon? Let's say.
You can blow up like an inflatable thing,
Yeah.
Oh, but that has a thing.
and then put the thing.
Put the plug in.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah. You're asking if it's you're making a kli, but these things are already a kli before. and then they're emptied out, and then you're just redoing it. You're making it new clean. We'll get to that, Be'ezrat Hashem. So with the balloon, you could take one of these ties, that they have for garbage bags, these metal ties, just put that around it, because you could close it like that. That's,
Twisty ties?
What?
Twisty ties?
Yeah, twisty ties.
And you can twist it?
Yeah, according to most poskim.
So you could do that, like, let's say you want to put bread in a bag, and you want to use the twisty ties.
Yeah,
you can do that
that's
too?
that's the way to do it,
I
right?
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Can you tear it from the?
Yeah.
What? Because they come like in a pack, like.
Oh, they come in a whole pack.
Yeah, they're like
Oh, that's what you mean. That's what you mean. I thought you mean like to tear the thing itself. That's a good question. Probably not. No, most probably not, because that's measured. That's like perforated, and you're like you want it to be that. That would be a problem.
Separate them. My kids did that once, and then I'm like, okay, so they're there for Shabbat.
Oh yeah, perfect. That's it. That's a good activity to give them.
Solid throw.
That'll work.
Rabbi, it's either you intend not to stay forever, or it's an expert not both.
It has to be both in order that it should be the oraita from the Torah. If one is missing, it becomes rabbinically asur. Okay, so either you keep it forever, but it's not an expert knot, or it's an expert knot, but it's very temporary. For example, let's say this happens with kids a lot. You watch them, you see their sisit, one of the knots is loose, is opening up,
Oh, you're driving crazy.
right? And it drives you crazy. What are you gonna do? You can't tie that. You can't pull that up, because if you do that, if you tighten it, if this is Qosher Shekayama, you would definitely want this to stay for a long time. You don't want it to open. So this is already asur. It's Qosher Shekayama, although it's not an expert knot. It's just tying it, but it's an Qosher Shekayama. Therefore, it is asur.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Sorry, just a question. Let's say, okay, so on Shabbat, like the leftover challah that we don't eat, we put it in a bag and we single knot it, and then we wait for it to we'll throw it out later on in the week.
Okay.
So we can't tie it.
Single knot, meaning what? You take one end, you take the other end, and you just go.
No, like
No,
let's
you
say it's like a
twist it
rectangular
and-
bag. Like I
Okay.
take it and I knot it.
That's
in
called
itself.
a backhand knot
Okay.
in Boy Scout language.
Okay.
That's asur.
That's usher.
Really?
Even
Which
like
one? The
okay,
one
so
that
then
you-
what about
If you
the
do it
two?
very
When you
loose,
fold it
Twisting
into
it
it
and
and
like do the leg.
Yeah.
do like that.
right.
That's
If
what
you
I
do it
wanted.
very loose, you might be okay, because especially a bag, it doesn't get knotted very tight.
Right.
If it's a string, it's definitely asur. That's a Qosher Shekayama. On a string to do that, that's definitely a no. But on a bag, because it becomes loose and the knot doesn't really stay that strong, there might be a heter, but definitely you would rather take the two ends and like that.
So that's okay.
That's fine. You're not making any knot. That's just
Okay.
a wrap. That's all it is.
Oh, two ends is okay, but
The
one
two
end.
ends, you go like this,
What's
like
the
that.
backhanded one?
Backhanded, you take a string
Uh-huh.
and you wrap it and you pass one of the end of the string through and you make a knot. That's called a backhanded knot. That's a.
What about when
type.
there's a loop and you just pull that loop? Those kind of knots. Do you know which knots I'm talking about?
No.
It's like
Where's their loop?
a loop knot. And then you just pull the
That's a bow tie, isn't that?
It's like half a
Wouldn't
bow
that be a
tie.
bow-
Half a
Right.
bow tie, yeah.
That's again,
A bow tie.
yeah, that's nothing. A bow tie is just with one pull, you pull it out.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not a knot.
Oh, okay.
A knot is a knot. A double knot is a knot. Right.
What if someone did a double knot and now you want to take tissues out and it's Shabbat? You have to rip the bag?
Again, what happens? The
Before Shabbat, there was
There-
like a
tissues are in the
in a
bag.
plastic bag and a double
Someone
knot.
did a double knot. So a double knot we'll get to. There's a big machlok about a double knot. Is it a maaseh uman? Is it not maaseh uman? We'll get to that. But easily you could tear it. But we'll get. But the double knots, according to most Sephardi poskim, it's fine. We'll get to it. Let's get to the, yeah.
What if your intention is to the next day at lunch eat more challah? So your intention is not for it to be permanent, and you're going to open it the next day.
In that case, you're fine.
So even if your
Yeah,
intention
usually you
is,
make French toast the next morning, like with your leftover challah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
No, it has to
If-
be on Shabbat. Oh.
If your intention is that the next day you're going to open it, definitely, and that's why you're closing it now, not a backhanded
But you
knot.
still have to do
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
You still have
Right.
to do it like that.
Backhanded is still usher.
Because the backhanded becomes a maaseh uman. Backhand becomes a kesher. It's an expert knot. That's the problem. It's not because it's kayama, because it's going to stay, because it's an expert knot. Now, if something is missing both of the components, it's not a maase uman, and it's not, your intention is not shel kayama, number two, right? Then it's lechatchila to make that knot, and it's lechatchila to open that knot. Okay? When both of the conditions are missing, you're fine. Okay? Next.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, the example are plenty. Like, your shoelace. You want to close a shoelace, you do a regular knot, and then you want to do a bow tie. It's not shel kayama, certainly not shel kayama. You don't want to leave your shoes on for the next 7 days,
No,
that's
it's
for
not
sure.
expert.
And it's not an expert knot, therefore it's allowed. And obviously the other way around also. Any knot that you're going to open, right? And this was an expert knot, and it was done to stay. That's asur from the Torah, to unravel, to untie that. If one of the components are missing, if there was a kesher shel kayama and it was something to stay, but it wasn't an expert knot, and you want to open it, that's also asur. Remember, it worked the other way around also. And if it was a maase uman, it was a knot that was complicated, some expertise, but it was meant to be opened the next day, that's also asur to open, right? Both of these cases would be asur to open. Now, some say that any knot that you're not going to open it on the same day, right? This is considered kesher shel kayama, right? That means you made the knot, right? And you have no intention of opening it today, right? This is kesher shel kayama, and it is asur to tie that on Shabbat. But, so in that case, let's say Shabbat noon, you want to tie your child's shoelace, right? And you're not gonna open it today, you're gonna open it tonight, after Shabbat is over. So according to that opinion, that would be absolutely asur. Okay? We don't hold like that. That's definitely, we don't hold like that. And we say that you could certainly open the shoelace, right, after Shabbat, because you don't usually leave your shoelace closed for more than 24 hours. Although, I do concede, some children, they like to keep that knot on for an extended couple of months period of time, but we're talking about average. Okay, usually parents see to it, sometimes it should be opened, so we don't want that to be a kesher shel kayama, therefore it would be allowed. But anyways, as we said, according to Maran, according to Shulchan Aruch, a kesher that's going to stay even until tonight, even for the next 6 days, you're fine, right? The kesher shel kayama is only when it's up to 7 days, and you could make that knot on Shabbat without a problem. Okay? Some say that a person must be careful not to make a double knot, meaning one knot, which is just the wrap, but then do another one over that, right? Even though you're not doing it that it should stay, because they say that we are not experts to know what an expert knot is. Get it? We're not experts. We don't know. We're not sure exactly what an expert knot is. Maybe this is an expert knot, and therefore it would be asur, right? Maybe this double knot is asur. This is one of the Chachamim Shiltei Giborim writes in the opinion of the Rambam, that he wants to say that because it becomes very tight, it becomes this knot, the double knot could become very tight, especially if the shoelace or the string is very thin and you do a double knot, it's extremely tight. And they want to explain in the Rambam. They see that he's considering a knot which is very tight as an expert knot, and therefore they want to say that this is certainly and you want it to stay, then it's even asur from the Torah. That's their opinion, but others argue with. So Rav Ovadia says that he brings many others that they argue, and they allow a person to do a double knot on Shabbat. As long as your intention is not that he should stay for the next 7 days, it is allowed, right? But if a person could be machmir, not to do a double knot on Shabbat, tavo alav baracha, may he be blessed. But if there is a need, the person is stuck, is like really suffering. Friday night he wants to go to sleep, and by mistake, when he was tying his shoes, it became a double knot. You can't sleep with your shoes on, and you can't take off the shoe. Certainly, you could open the shoelace on Shabbat, even when there is a double knot. Okay, Ashkenazim are machmir on this. Okay, Ashkenazim are machmir because of the shiltei giborim that I mentioned to you. They're machmir on this. But even according to Ashkenazim, if there is tsa'ar, if there is a person is under stress because of this, you are allowed to open it. More so, if whatever you did, you couldn't open it, it's so tight, you could take a knife and cut the shoelace and done. You're good. I don't know how you're going to wear it tomorrow, but that's something.
Tsar just means any uncomfort or like really, really like
Any
pain.
uncomfort. In this case, we could take it easy and say any uncomfort would do it. Like, it gets on his nerves to do it. Now, let's say there is one knot. A person has one knot, right, from before Shabbat. And let's say on the garbage bag, someone put it aside and there was only one knot, and then you come and say, oh, no, it's going to open up. You want to make another knot on it on Shabbat, it's certainly asur, right? And lahavdil. We mentioned about the sisit also, like, there was already a single knot there. You just want to tighten the knot, that would, which is like, just adding to what was in existence, that would be also, again, under the same rule, and it would be asur. Okay, so now, if you have a double knot from before, right? And a person just made a double knot without thinking if he's going to open it, not going to open it during the week. Who cares? You make a knot. You have no intention of, let's see, it's Shabbat. What am I going to do? This is if your intention wasn't specifically that I want this knot to stay. We can't say that it's a kesher shel kayama. Okay? You understand what happened? During the week, like a person made a double knot. He had no intention. Maybe I'm going to open it tonight, tomorrow. He had nothing, no intention whatsoever. In that case, we do not say that it's a kesher shel kayama, and a person would be allowed to open that on Shabbat, right? Even according to those that say that a double knot is asur, in this case, we say it's not a problem because it's not a kesher shel kayama. Okay.
How about if someone else did it? We have to ask them what their intention was, or you assume?
Well, usually, no, we're talking about that you yourself did it. You know what's going on. If someone else did it, you don't know. Maybe he wanted it to be kesher shekayama. He wanted it to stay.
So you have to know.
So then you want to open that. That's absolutely asur, right? We're talking about, the person himself. They opened it, Now, it could be that you even made the knot 4 months ago, 5 months ago, But you had no intention. You could have opened it yesterday. You could have opened it a year ago, or actually 4 months ago, 5 months ago. But then in that case, it's not an issue. All right. Let's say like a bag of challah, right? Bag of challah you buy from the store. You tie it up. You make a double knot on it, nice and good and tight, and you want to put it aside so it won't go dry. So then on Shabbat you say, oh, I'm running out of challah. I better get this. Then, what was your intention when you made the knot on the bag? It was like, who knows when I'm going to use it. Today, tomorrow, next day, next week. There was no intention. So on Shabbat, you're allowed to open the bag, right? Untie the knot on the bag.
One question.
Yes.
Is this where diapers come in, that you're not supposed to close them again after?
No. The diapers, that would be, the whole question is, Be'ezat Hashem, we'll get to it next week, that's by tofer. That's a question of sewing it. Putting it back together, that would be that. It's not a part of kosher. It's not. You're not making any knots by the diaper. Was that your question?
Yeah.
Well, the bag that you're going to put it into, then how are you going to close it? That's the question. Make a double knot, make a single knot, make a backhand knot. However, some people put it double bag, so it'll take care of all the problems. As we said. If you want to make a bow tie, so now there is different ways of making a bow tie. There is one way, you don't make that initial tie, right? You just make a bow tie, right? It's not very strong. That's nothing. That's not even close to a knot. The question becomes: is one allowed to make that initial wraparound, and then over that to make the bow tie? That becomes a question. Some poskim say that. This is a knot, and although it's not an expert knot, but it's still a knot, and they are machmir on it. But Sephardim, we were never machmir on this. We were never machmir on this to do that, right? And especially if you're going to anyways open it within the next 7 days, it's not a question. The first one that we mentioned without the knot underneath, there was no question to start with because there is no knot. But even in this case, we say because with one pull you could open it, so you could see that there is no knot here, therefore it is allowed.
What about ties?
Sorry.
Ties, there is no knot.
There's no knot.
All the poskim say that in a tie there is no knot. It's just a wrap. It's just wrapped up.
What if, like, you have a bag, but you don't want to tie it, you just kind of twist it and just, fold it under the bottom? That's totally fine?
That's perfectly fine. You're not making any knots, are you?
No, but you're folding and you're.
That's fine.
Creating.
That's fine. In fact, a lot of people prefer that, as opposed to like taking the two ends. This way, you're not stuck with anything whatsoever. Like you just twist it and then put it under, tuck it underneath, and you're fine. There's not making any knots. If someone closed the shoelaces before Shabbat, right? There was a knot and a bow tie, right? And let's say there was even double knots, right? So the question becomes because he did this before Shabbat, you might think that you should not be able to open that on Shabbat, because who knows what the person's intention was. Based on what we said before, definitely it's going to be tsar. The person is going to be in pain if you don't open this knot on Shabbat. It certainly is mutar to open it on Shabbat without any questions at all. Now, there is another segment to Qosher. I don't know how relevant it is, but we'll still mention it. That's the Rambam writes, if a person takes different types of strings, it could be a wool string, it could be silk, it could be linen, anything, and he weaves them together in order to create a rope. Okay, in order to create a rope, he weaves them together. This is a tolda of Qosher. The Mishnah calls it potel chavalim. He weaves, he makes a rope, right? This is asur because this is like Qosher, but that's only asur if it'll stay. That means if you pull it apart, right, it'll hold itself, then it's asur. But if it'll just unravel as soon as you pull on it, that's still not asur, right? That's the shi'ur. That's the amount that you weave it together and it'll stay. That would be the isur. And vice versa also. If he has a rope and he decides, why not? It's fun. Let me unravel this rope. That's untying on Shabbat, and it is certainly asur unless his intention is to be mekalkel. His intention is to just break it apart. There's no intention of something constructive. Then that would be if it's mekalkel, then that wouldn't be asur. But if he's doing it in order to open it up, literally to open it up, that would be untying on Shabbat, which is asur.
What if you have like a snag on your shirt or something? Pull it off?
Is that a tie?
Is it a tie? No, like a hanging string type of thing.
Then we have another issue. Sometimes that's when you pull on that, right? It's going to cause the whole thing to tear, right? Then you have a problem of correction.